In May 2000, I started my nurse training and moved into an old hospital building that was formerly used as the morgue. I didn't know this until I moved out. The building was really creepy and we all joked it was something out of The Shining. It had long dark corridors, cold spots, and a constant feeling you were being watched. Despite the creepy feeling, I never experienced anything spooky for a while, mainly because I was working or socializing so much. I was having trouble sleeping one night because my room was so hot. I finally got to sleep but woke up about 2 a.m. because I felt icy cold. I covered myself up but had a terrible feeling of dread. I tried to push the sensation away, but after a minute, I felt like I was being held down by something ice cold. I was terrified but was too scared to look. The sensation of being held down lasted a minute and went away. The room suddenly became really hot again and the feeling of dread disappeared. After a few minutes, the sensation came back even stronger and I was pinned down again by something icy cold. When it lifted, I ran out of bed and switched the light on, which stayed on for rest of the night. Nothing happened in that room again. I actually moved dorms after this and nothing happened for a while. Sadly, I was asked to go back to the east side of the building while building work was carried out in my dorm. I subsequently experienced worse things, mainly knocking and scratching sounds in the early hours, the feeling of something jumping off my bed, and also waking up to something scratching my back. I confided in my other housemates who were equally terrified and experiencing similar things. A few people even reported waking up to see a young girl in their rooms. We all got so worked up that we all slept in the same room for months. I eventually left to complete my final placement and was so relieved to never see that place again.
I was a patient in the hospital when this happened. I was not on any mind-altering drugs and I've never had any mental health problems either. I spent 5 nights in the older wing of the hospital where I would keep the bathroom light on at night to avoid complete darkness and to easily navigate my way to the bathroom. On the 3rd night, I awoke to someone standing next to me by my IV machine. Thinking they were taking readings, I closed my eyes, but when I opened them seconds later, nobody was there, and I heard no sounds of footsteps or doors closing. I later realized that no readings were needed from my IV machine, as it was either on or off. However, I did not dwell on the incident. On the 4th or 5th night, I noticed a shadow on the left side of the room, and as I studied it, I realized it resembled the shape of a person. Suddenly, its left arm raised, and it pointed toward the door, indicating for me to leave. I closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing there. Although I caught only a brief glimpse of the figure, I could discern that it was shorter, dressed in a gown, and had a grandma-style haircut. Furthermore, it was not a typical shadow, as it appeared as a 3-dimensional object that was not entirely against the wall. After seeing it for the 2nd time, I was not particularly frightened but rather intrigued, thinking, I've never seen anything like that before.
During my early days as a psychiatric nurse, I worked at a residential mental health facility where I met a resident named Marion Douglas. Marion was an elective mute, meaning he couldn't or wouldn't speak, without any apparent pathological reason. In his earlier years, Marion had spoken and seemed normal, except for his towering height of almost 7 feet. He hailed from the Deep South and joined the military at 19, stationed somewhere in the South before disappearing one night. After years of being declared AWOL, he was finally presumed dead. 10 years later, a man of 7 feet height walked into a VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and told the receptionist, "My name is Marion Douglas and I've been dead for 10 years." That was the only time he spoke. He was covered in dust, wearing the same clothes as on the night he vanished. He had no identification or social security number, but they identified him through his fingerprints. He was in good physical condition, except for his refusal to speak. His family was informed of his reappearance, but they refused to acknowledge him, considering him a haint or a stand-in for their lost relative. Marion spent his days pacing, never showing any desire for anything, and always grinning with his mouth moving, as if he were speaking, or muttering but never uttering a sound. He had a disconcerting habit of throwing his head back, as if laughing heartily, but without making any sound. Medications and occupational therapy had no effect on Marion, and he remained in his silent state, pacing around and appearing to listen when spoken to. On my last day at the facility, I saw Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to mimic laughter. I have often wondered whether I had been dealing with a ghost all along.